Dr. Versalati here. In this screencast, we're going to talk about noun phrases, particularly determiners, and we're going to use articles, the prototypical determiner, to kind of introduce this topic. The objectives are to review the structure of noun phrases in English and to review the main functions of articles and the subfunctions, which will enable you to do the next assignment on noun phrases. I just want to have a quick word that sometimes linguists use different terms than grammar books, and there's reasons for that. As a result, as both teachers and linguists in this course, we're going to have to navigate both and understand the context of why each would be used. And this will become more clear as we continue. An example of this is part of speech. You'll see this a lot in grammar books, and linguists might use word category or syntactic category. And the examples are noun, verb, adjective, adverb, things like that. Okay, so now let's move on to noun phrases. So we have some noun phrases here: the book, the car, the answer, a book, a car, an answer. And they're split into columns: a definite article, the, and the indefinite article in English. Now, sometimes you might see books that say there are two indefinite articles, but as linguists, we would say that there's one indefinite article that has a phonological alternation, which we learned about in Chapter 1, Ziggus Chapter 1. Now, when do we use each article? When do we use the definite? When do we use the indefinite? Though the work that articles and determiners generally do are classifying and identifying the referent. And referent is just the fancy word for what we're referring to. So if we want to classify, if we want to name a noun as belonging to a class of objects, if we want to say it belongs to the set, I'm talking about a thing, whatever the noun is, and it's part of the group, say book. For instance, the sentence, I bought a book. I'm saying, hey, I'm telling you that I'm talking about this thing, and it's just a set. And this picture, it's a member of this set. I'm not telling you which book I purchased. I'm just saying, of the whole set of books in the world, I bought one of them. Now, the identifying work of determiners is when we want to point out that we're talking about a single member, distinct from all the other members in that set. I'm talking about a specific one of these. So if I tell you, hey, I bought the book, I'm saying that I bought a specific, pointing at a specific member of the class or the set of books. Okay, so and there are some restrictions that we'll talk about. For instance, we wouldn't say an electricity or a sand, perhaps. So there are some restrictions on the use of the indefinite article that we're going to talk about here and also in the reading that we'll have. So let's go to the classifying and identifying activity. Okay, here's the handout that or the activity that you'll find also in the same module. And we're going to look more at the different subfunctions of the classifying and identifying work. And these patterns will help us understand why we choose certain words and why sometimes learners of English, it sounds strange when they create a certain noun phrases with certain articles and nouns. So when you look at these, underline the determiner in the examples and consider how the determiner is doing the work that is filled in. And some of them are subtle, and I think that the way to kind of understand this is not by reading these, though we will go over some, but by practicing it, which will be the assignment later. So let's look at some of these. We might say there's a big, mean, ugly dog here when we're trying to describe. If we have lots of descriptor words, adjectives, we might use for when we're describing something, we might classify and use that indefinite article. But if we say something like, I've seen the dog, but not the cat, we're distinguishing a particular dog. I think maybe it would be interesting to move down to the idea of unmodified versus post-modified. A lot of times unmodified nouns might have the indefinite article, but when we post-modify a noun, in this case we have a relative clause that that he's dead, after the noun fact, we often say use the definite article, the fact that he's dead, versus a fact that he's dead, which would sound strange to us. And we might have trouble explaining to a learner of English why we wouldn't say a fact that he's dead. Linguists have noticed the pattern that if the noun is modified afterward, we often use the definite article. The other example that might be useful to go over is the last one. If I bought a skirt, a shirt, and a belt, we're just saying, we're just referring to those nouns as objects, as categories, members, like members of all the skirts in the world, all the shirts in the world, of the belts in the world. I bought one of those. But we use the definite article sometimes for objects in shared experience. Let's look at this example here. I bought a house, but we're not talking about that particular clause, but the roof leaks. So if in this case, if we say the roof leaks, the explanation here by Yule is that's an object in shared experience. What do I mean? Well, I said that I bought a house, and that might be any member of that category. But I don't have to say I bought a house and this house has a roof, right? I don't have to introduce the idea that the house has a roof. That's in shared experience. So I can just go on and say the roof leaks. I can, as a speaker of English, I can refer to the roof without introducing it, because we as speakers in our community of English-speaking people know that houses have roofs. Now at the bottom of this page we have of this chart by Yule has no differentiation needed. So there are times where there are noun phrases without any article or any determiner. And there's some reasons here. I'm going to just cover them up for a little bit, and you can, we'll talk through them. One reason is I like movies. We can contrast that with I like the movies. And we could say that, we could use the definite article, but when we say I like movies, we really, it's a plural noun in that noun phrase, but it's also indefinite, right? We don't want to say movies, even though it's indefinite, meaning it's not specific. We're not being specific about which movies we mean. With I bought candy, we can compare that to I bought the candy. Again, we could be distinguishing about that, or it could be already identified. We could be describing candy that we had already been talking about. I mean, we could be referring to candy that we've already been talking about. But if I just said I bought candy, we we don't use an article there because it's a mass noun, and although we can use an article, we often don't with mass nouns, and especially if it's unspecified. The next one, there's Dr. Versalati. I think you've already figured out that we do not need an article there because the referent, Dr. Versalati, is already very specific. We don't need to, we certainly, I don't think we'd classify it unless there were a whole bunch of Dr. Versalatis, and we wouldn't need to identify or distinguish because the noun Dr. Versalati is a proper noun that's already identifying a specific referent, right? A specific person in the real world. The last one, she went to college after high school. We don't, if we said she went to the college, we are referring to a specific college. But if we just say she went to college, it refers to more like an activity or an event rather than a location. Another example is if you say, oh, I'm going to bed, that's like the event of going to bed for the night, going to sleep, retiring for the evening. Whereas if I said, oh, I put the baby on the bed, then I'm referring to the specific location. Okay, I hope that again helps a little bit, but I think as you get more into it by doing the assignment, the graded assignment on noun phrases, that will help. Also look for the next screencast where we talk about other determiners doing the same work.